So it's been 1 year since we started this podcast.
It's pretty incredible. Not gonna lie, I had no idea until you tweeted it out. I'm thinking, a 1 year anniversary, and so much has happened in that 1 year. It's awesome. I would shake your hand or even give you a hug if we were in the same room, but we're not. So, air high five.
All right, virtual high five. But we got a good show for you guys today. Long show, so let's get to it.
Yeah, put your seatbelts on or buckle up, whatever you want to do. But anyways, welcome to the Pistons Talk podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Lance Caprosi. Follow me on Twitter at Lance Caprosi. Follow my co-host Anthony at Pistons Talk across all social media platforms. Anthony started the brand. I hitched my wagon to it. All right, let's get this started. Now that we've had time to digest the draft, what are your thoughts on it? What kind of grade would you give them?
I'm going to give them an A-.
Okay.
I like when we were looking at the fifth pick, you said Taylor Hendricks. I thought Cam Whitmore might be in play. God, was I wrong, by the way, with that one. Goes to 20 to the Rockets. But I like the pick with the Sar Thompson. I think he fills a need, and that is defense. And he's very versatile. And I think that just the way Troy was smiling during his presser tells me all I need to know about this kid. Like, he is so excited that he was there at 5. Like, he didn't think he was going to be there at 5. And I'm willing to kind of, give him a chance before I do have an opinion on him. With Marcus Sasser, bro, I love that pick.
Yeah.
Love that pick. The kid, that guy is a pit bull. Like, he would be Terry Rozier if Terry Rozier played defense. Or Tyrese Maxey if he played defense. Like that, I think the Sasser pick, more fans are just going to fall in love with the kid because he's just such a scrappy defensive guard. And his catch and shoot numbers from 3 are insane. Like, I'm so happy they addressed 3-point shooting and defense in this draft. And I love it, man. I love this draft.
Yeah, I don't know. This might be, I wasn't high on Asar when it first happened. The video's out there. I wasn't like jumping out of my seat or anything. But the few days since the draft, I have just fallen in love with that kid's game, man. Like, he is going to be such a fun player. I know he's getting comp to Andre Iguodala, but like that, I love that comp as well. But I also love the comp to like Andrew Wiggins and like playing that role that he does for Golden State. That is so huge, and it's just going to be great, man. He's going to be a killer in transition. He's going to get after it defensively. That's probably the one thing I love about his game is just the defensive versatility. Like, he is going to be one of those dudes that's just going to lock people up at some point in the NBA. That's what I really feel like. And then, man, just the way he cuts to the basket. Like, I know the shooting's not there yet, but it looked more consistent. As I watched more, because after they draft, you got to watch more. And that's just what I did. And his shooting numbers went up. They got higher in the OTE playoffs. He has more confidence in his jumper. He's not quite the playmaker like Amen is, but he can still get after it, average 6 assists per game in the OTE. I love his being that secondary playmaker off of Kade and Jaden Ivey. It's such a great draft, man. I gotta give it. I'm giving it an A- as well. In the Sasser pick, dude. Like, for a couple months now, I've been talking about how I want like Javon Carter to sign with the Detroit Pistons. I'm not comparing them exactly, but like the 6'1" dog defensively, can hit shots, can bring the ball up the floor for you, can create a bucket for himself. That's what you're getting in Sasser. That's what I wanted in Javon Carter, and we're getting it. Like, I just love both of these picks, and I can't be more excited. I just can't be. It was such a hell of a draft, man. It really was.
It was. Asar is not lacking confidence either.
No.
I mean, he had a couple bars at his presser that we're going to get into later. Kind of sparking that Pistons Rockets rivalry, which I think it might turn into a rivalry now if you kind of connect the dots, man. You had Kade and the Jalen Green fans. Now you're throwing Steven Silos into the mix, and now you got brothers. Like, it might be a legitimate rivalry.
The one that the Pistons will just dominate year after year. But yeah, I loved it. I mean, both of these guys are going to fit in so well with the Pistons next year. Asur, like we were just saying, like being there's no pressure for him either to play in Detroit. Like he doesn't have to be the playmaker. He doesn't have to do anything extra offensively. He just has to be a dog defensively, which he's going to fit in just so nicely with Detroit. They need that type of guy with that mentality on that side of the ball. He's going to push it in transition. He's going to run with Kade. He's going to run with Jaden Ivey. Even Bojan might even run with him. You know, who knows? So it's going to be, I just, what do you think about their fit, man? Like, I'm losing my train of thought just thinking about it. But what about you? How do you see these two fitting with Detroit next year?
I think when I look at Asar, he's kind of that wing that both of us have talked about since the season has ended. Like, what do the Pistons need to address in the draft? And we both said, we need a wing. And he checks that box. I think some people kind of label Amin Thompson as his playmaker. I forgot who said it in the chat. If you are watching live on YouTube, Asar actually averaged more assists in OTE than Amin did. I think there's a lot to his game that just fits well. Defense, character for one. Like, the kid is just so mature for his age, and I think he'll just fit perfectly. I think the shooting will get there. I think with Sasser, I think why he fits so well, as Troy Weaver said it in his press conference, is like this kid's a rock. He's rock solid. He's just one of those glue guys that you need off of your bench to hold everyone else accountable. And he's one of those guys that wasn't a one and done. He played at Houston for quite a long time, and he was leading one of the best college offense last year. So that's something I'm really excited about. He's a guard that can either play the point or play off ball, play the shooting guard. So I think they both fit perfectly, and I think they both are going to bring defensive intensity and just get this team actually not giving up 130 points a game. It's just we address defense, and I love that.
No, like we were talking about earlier with Marcus Sasser just being a pit bull on the defensive side. Like he's going to get after it. Can you imagine playing against someone with that like type of confidence and energy every day? He's just going to make everybody better. Matt, just every day in practice, he's going to be pushing it, just trying to get after it. And then they're just going to unleash him during games against every other team. And it's just going to be a nightmare for him. Like I know, like, as fans, we're always talking up our own draft picks and our own team and everything, but it really feels like Asar and Marcus Sasser are going to be here for a long time, man. They both got just that mentality, and they're going to bring Detroit back to contention, I believe, be a part of it at least. Not going to put all the pressure on their shoulders. Obviously, this is Kate's team, but they're going to be a part. They're in the mix to help this team, to help the Pistons go far, and eventually it's going to happen. Like, man, we needed that guy off the bench, that combo guard that can hit a bucket, play, create a shot for himself, get after it defensively, create something for other people. And that's what you got in Marcus Sasser. I feel like these two are just, they're perfect fits, I feel like, in Detroit, man.
Yeah, I mean, Troy always talks about getting the guy and the person, right? And I think he did. I think they're two high-quality character guys, and I love the fact that they didn't have a interview like Brandon Miller. I don't know if you saw Brandon Miller's interview. He said the Hornets are making the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I saw that.
Love the confidence, man, but like that people are gonna just bring that up probably for years when Charlotte's back in the lottery.
So far, every year that Troy Weaver's had a pick, he's had Killian Hayes. He was in the top 7. Kade was number 1. Jaden Ivey was number 5. Now Asar is number 5. Do you see Asar? Man, wow, I'm blanking on just. Do you see Asar continue the trend of Troy's top 7 picks, starting game 1 or starting right away?
I think that in this case, no. And not to say he's not capable of starting. It's just, as of right now, as the roster is constructed, this podcast is before free agency, because we do clip this podcast out, just giving you guys some context and warning, because sometimes I'll clip shit out and like, oh, dude, you guys are late. Like, I schedule shit out.
Yeah.
As of today, no. He's probably coming off the bench. Now, we could trade Bojan. I don't know why we would, but he could be a 3. I think he will start off the bench, much like Jalen Duren did. And if his play style is just to the point where you can't keep him on the bench, you have to put him in the starting lineup, then yes, I could see him starting. But right off the bat, probably not. I think the Pistons want to have some 3-point shooting out there next to Kade and Ivy, and I think Bojan would probably be your starting three. I'm assuming we're still going to try to do that two big lineup too.
Man, I agree with you that I don't think Sasser is going to start right away, but I'm also thinking maybe they go with Bojan at the 4. He played 53% of his minutes last year at the 4 spot. I mean, you have Duren at 5, so you still have someone to clean things up if they get beat. I want it to work that way. It doesn't matter if he starts from day one or not. I'm not going to be hung up on it if it doesn't happen. It would just seem so weird though that the trend would end with him, of them starting like right from the start of the season, because we've seen it the past 3 years with Jaden Ivey, Cade, and Killian Hayes. Maybe that's just a Dwayne Casey thing. I don't know why I'm putting it all on Troy Weaver to make that happen. But I do agree with you. I do think Sasser will come off the bench, but there's a tiny bit of me that thinks, he'll be starting alongside Bojan. They'll be the forwards going forward. And I think Isaiah Stewart and James Wiseman will come off the bench with Isaiah Livers. That will be the 3 front court people. And I'm doing this before free agency. I'm just doing this with the roster that it is right now. I don't know what free agency will do. Someone else could potentially start at the 3 or the 4 for the Pistons going forward. But right now, as the roster stands, I think, there's a chance Sasser could start from day one. But I'm going to agree with you. I don't think he does, just because the shooting is inconsistent. You want more shooting out there. You don't want the lanes to be clogged. You want lanes to be open for Cade and Jaden Ivey to do their work. So yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you and say Sasser will be coming off the bench day one.
Yeah, I mean, there could be situations where he's out there with the starters in crunch time when you need a defensive stop, and I expect that fully from Monty Williams. But I don't think right off the gate he's going to start, and I don't really think Monty Williams is going to be in a rush to put him out into the fire right away. I think this is going to be a team that you're not going to see as many mistakes. Like if you make a mistake, you're on the bench. I don't think it's going to be a learning curve. I think they want to get better. I think they want to win more than 20 games a year. So I wouldn't really expect too big of a leash either.
Okay, interesting. Okay, I got to ask you this question because I was listening to Thinking Basketball and they brought this up, and it's which Thompson twin is in the better situation. Now, let me just start this off real quick and say I think both of them were drafted to great situations that are going to help them be in a role that's going to help them develop and grow as basketball players. Like Houston, they needed a playmaker. They needed someone to run the offense. They got someone like that in Amin. And then for Sasser, he's going to be able to play pretty much pressure free, I feel like, because they're not going to ask him to carry the offense. They're going to ask him to play defense and find a role within the offense. But what situation do you think is better for the Thompson twins?
I think they're both in unique situations. And I think what's really cool about the Pistons and the Rockets is they both hired high caliber coaches.
Yeah.
Now, Houston, I don't know. Reading all the free agency targets that they could go after, like Brook Lopez, Fred VanVleet, James Harden, Dylan Brooks. Sasser and Amin might be in a similar situation where they're both coming off the bench. Situation, I don't really think one's better than the other, but for the sake of this topic, I'm going to say that Sasser is in a better position, situation, whatever you want to call it, because you have an all-star potential backcourt in Kade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, and you have a starting caliber center that Monty Williams believes that could be a top 10 player in the NBA and Jalen Duren. So I'm going to go with Sasser just for the sake of this topic. But what about you?
I do think it's Sasser just because the big thing is there's less pressure on him. Like he doesn't have to go and be the guy right away. I don't think he ever will be with Cade and Jaden Ivey in the mix, but like I was comparing him earlier to like everybody has Andre Iguodala and then Andrew Wiggins. And in those roles that they played, they were allowed to excel without being the guys. And I think that's what you're going to get with Sasser in Detroit. But with the men, I just think there's more pressure to, be the guy right away because they were looking for someone to run the show. I know that they had Kevin Porter Jr. playing the point guard position. I don't really believe he's a point guard. I think he would be better with someone setting him up, and you're getting someone like that with the men. But that's why I think I think the other part too is, as I'm looking at the Houston Rockets roster, both teams are very young, but Houston doesn't really have anybody on their team that has really won anything. I'm not saying the Pistons do either, but they have different types of veterans, like an Alec Burke, like a Bojan, that have been in the league for a long time, that have had, obstacles, had their highs, had their lows. Those are good veterans to lean on and to learn from, and then you got someone like Monty Williams. I mean, Houston has Emi Udoka, who is also a player, so they both have that going for them. But you also just have a little bit more patience in Detroit because, you have a few more veterans that you can lean on. And I don't think they have that so much in Houston. So there's going to be more pressure. And that's why I would say that's why the situation is better for a Sir than it is for a men.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a hard, like, for me to like lean towards one twin. But I think this being a Pistons podcast, I'd probably get like pitchforks if I said a mean.
Yeah.
But I do believe Asar is in a better situation because Kade, Ivy, and Duran.
Yeah.
I feel like those are foundation pieces, and I feel like he could be a foundation piece as well. I mean, you're starting to. We talk about this rebuilding, like you're starting to see the pieces to the puzzle start to connect after each draft, and Asar is just another piece of that puzzle to eventually, complete it.
Yeah, that was another point I was going to touch on. It feels like Detroit has a little bit more direction. It seems like the pieces, like you were just saying, like the pieces are fitting together. And I think with Houston, there's a lot more question marks still that are there because they have a lot of great athletes. They're probably the most athletic team in the NBA with Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, Kenyon Martin Jr. It's just, they got a fun squad. They're going to be fun to watch, like a team that I will be paying attention to next season. I just think when you look at both rosters, you see more of a direction for the Detroit Pistons. And in Houston, they got some great pieces. They do, but there's less of a direction, I think, of looking at it as a fan. Maybe the GM, maybe the coaches, they see it. But as a fan of basketball, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't know how it all works. I don't know how it all will work. But with Detroit, I think there's just a clear picture.
Yeah, I think Houston, you're just going to see them go veteran savvy this free agency because they have the most cap space out of any team. Like, they can just go out and get anyone they want. And I think that's probably what they'll do. I think they're sick of rebuilding, and I think they just want to get to a point where they're back in the playoffs. And if that means losing maybe a prospect like a Josh Christopher or something like that, I think they're okay with that. I think they just kind of want to speed up the process where Detroit is comfortable just kind of doing it organically through the draft, through free agency, through trades, and not rushing the process because said player becomes available.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Let's move on to news, though. So news, here we go. RJ Hampton, fan favorite. He's waived by the Detroit Pistons, man. I don't know about you. I'm a little sad about it. I'm not. It's just, I really wanted him when he was coming out in the draft. I thought, man, if they could, because I remember it was the Killian Hayes draft, right? Killian Hayes goes and then they draft Isaiah Stewart, then Sadiq Bey. I thought, man, once they traded back into the first round, you might have a chance to get RJ Hampton, who's someone I really loved. It just didn't work in Detroit. I mean, I thought he played pretty well, hit a few shots, made quick decisions, didn't lack any confidence, was a blur getting to the rim. It's just that you have Marcus Sasser, you have Asar Thompson, you have Jaden Ivey, you have Kade Cunningham, and you also have Alec Burke, who's going to be getting minutes in the backcourt. It just didn't seem like there was a spot for RJ Hampton. But what are your thoughts on RJ Hampton?
Opens a roster spot. I'll say that first. Second, sad to see him go, but it's part of the business. I understand. I think more fans were upset that Corey Joseph is still on the roster. which I can understand. But like, hey, man, I'm not really sad or upset. Like we saw very limited minutes with him because we did pick him up on the waiver wire, but I'm sure he'll get picked up. I don't know if he would be interested in a 2-way contract. You can give out 3 now because of the new CBA.
Yeah.
If he's open to it, I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't hate it. Like, as long as you don't sign another Boeheim, I'm good.
He might have to change his name to Boeheim, RJ Boeheim, to get another shot with the Detroit Pistons. I do hope he finds another team, though, next season. I think he will. He's only 22 years old. So there's still something there. I don't know. I mean, if your expectations for him are like, he's going to be an all-star, you're going to be really disappointed. But I do think he could have value in the NBA as a potential rotation piece because, like I said, he made good decisions in Detroit. It was very limited. I get that. He had some good games, but, there's something there still as a rotation piece in the NBA.
Did you see his Instagram post after he got waived?
No, what did he post?
I'll just read you the caption. He wrote, I'm sorry, this is terrible podcasting. He who laughs last laughs the hardest. Be right, be back. Hashtag summer work. So he's taking this pretty personally by getting waived by the Detroit Pistons. So we might have a Piston killer down the line.
Jeez, I think he tweeted out something too, like context would have been everything or something. Like he had a kind of a cryptic tweet that I felt like was taking a shot at the Detroit Pistons just a little bit. But hey, I mean, dude, if he needs extra motivation and he wants to destroy the Pistons 2 times a year, okay, good luck. Just put a SAR on him, and we'll see. I don't want to hate RJ Hampton though. I want to root for him still.
I feel bad though for him because he was like one of the only players to reach out to both the SAR and Marcus, and then the Pistons waived him. Like the next day.
Thanks for showing him around. Goodbye. This comes from Omari Sankofa II. Kade Cunningham will be healthy for training camp. So there's an update for everybody. Because I feel like on Twitter, I see a lot of what is going on with Kade. The injury might be a lot worse than what they're saying. And here we get an update. He'll be ready for training camp. I'm excited for him. But when you saw this news, like, what did you start to think? Did you start? Because for me, when I saw that he was going to be healthy for training camp, I'm like, yes, the band is going to be back together. They're going to be hitting there's going to be some great hits this season, potentially the play-in. Who knows? But what were your thoughts when you saw this, man?
Happy for him. I love it. I think that was the report. I think when Weaver talked on Bally Sports during the season that we expect him to be available around training camp. I just miss watching him play basketball, honestly. Like, I feel like I got robbed out of a whole season because I only got to see 12 games. He's just a fun player to watch. I'm happy that he's still rehabbing. And God forbid if I see one more fat Kade Cunningham picture on my timeline, man. What the hell, man? Like, yesterday was so crazy. People writing fake articles from James Edwards III saying that he reached out to Zion and he's up to 280 pounds. People photoshopping him with a beard. Oh man, I'm just happy he's going to be back for training camp, and I can't wait. But I had to just talk about that because everyone's just been like laughing about that on the timeline.
There was a TikTok, I believe, that someone posted on Twitter where the guy was hoping that it was Photoshop, and I think he was saying something along the lines of like, "How could Kade Cunningham let himself go?" That just cracked me up, dude. The power of the internet and the power of Photoshop can really just get some people confused out there, man. But dude, those pictures, I had to take a double take just for a second because I'm like, it looks so real. It looked so good. Like, I mean, that one where he had the sleeve on his leg and he was shooting. For a second, I know I had seen that picture and I don't remember. There's no way his beard was ever that full anyways. Like, I don't think it ever would be, but that's the barber talking in me anyway. When I saw that, I was like, there's no way he's overweight. Because I mean, I don't even know if vegans can get overweight. I don't know if they can. So
yeah, when I saw that picture, I saw some people on Rockets Twitter do it to Jalen Green, which he looks funny. I even saw some Pistons fans do it to Jaden Ivey, which Jaden Ivey looks like that uncle at the cookout that's always looking for extra helpings.
Dude, the one of James Edwards though looked that looked weird, man.
Like Ron Jeremy and Stan Van Gundy had a kid. Well, shout out to James though, but I can't believe someone like actually plagiarized this article. Like they're lucky they didn't get sued.
Yeah, that wasn't good, but I did crack up at that article just a little bit. I thought that was pretty funny. Let's talk about the summer league schedule. We have 4 games starting July 8th. We're at the Orlando. It's versus the Orlando Magic. That will be on ESPN. Then our rivals, Houston Rockets, July 9th, 6 p.m. on ESPN2. Then our rival from the north, the Toronto Raptors, July 12th, 6 p.m. And then San Antonio, July 14th at 8:30 p.m. on NBA TV, which we will not see Victor Wembanyama, so it does not matter at all. But what game are you looking forward to the most? And it's probably Houston, right? Like I could probably guess.
Houston and Orlando for sure. I don't know if they're gonna let Paolo play, but interested to see how Anthony Black and Asar Thompson match up. Two of the best defensive prospects coming out of the draft. Obviously, Houston, Amin and Asar. I feel like that is. I don't think ESPN knows what they got themselves into because it's going to be on national TV, and I know our timelines are going to be blowing up between Pistons fans and Rockets fans just shitting on each other. I can't wait for it. I personally can't wait. It's probably going to be crazy.
I know we're not going to talk about the summer league roster just yet, but are you excited to see some of the veterans? And I say veterans, they're only 2 or 3 year pros playing in that first game because we're going to see Ivy, I believe. We're going to see Isaiah Livers. We're going to see Duran and James Wiseman. That's going to be kind of fun against Orlando because then we're also going to see him with the SOAR. And I just kind of, those are 5 players that are going to be playing for the Pistons this year, getting actual regular season minutes. So it's going to be nice to see how they gel early and see if they can get that chemistry going early. We'll see. But I think Orlando, that's a game I'm excited for because we haven't seen Pistons basketball in a couple months. And then Houston, obviously, because of the rivalry, that's going to be fun. Asura and Amen. And then Toronto and San Antonio. I mean, I'll take a glimpse at them. I probably won't be that invested in the games compared to the first 2, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to see Duran back out there. I think Ivy too. I'd laugh if they threw Killian out there, but I don't think they will. That would be like what year? This would be his 4th year, but I don't think I'll be out in the summer league. But I think it'll be good reps for everyone out there. And I know a lot of Pistons fans. I saw this weekend they were kind of like, why would you send Jaden Ivey? He doesn't need it. Why would you send Jalen Durden? Doesn't need it. Let me remind you, they sent year 3 Jared Allen in the summer league, beat the Pistons in the championship game, and he went for 30-8. And then everyone knew who the hell Jared Allen was because for the first 2 years, no one knew who he was. I think it can build confidence. You can get, more reps out there. Obviously, you're playing lesser competition, but I think these players just like playing basketball. They don't care if it's the summer league. They don't care if it's the Drew League. They just want to hoop.
I mean, Ron Artest back in 05, after his long suspension for the Malice at the Palace, he played in summer league. He played all 4 games for the Indiana Pacers, and then he was traded 16 games later into the season to the Sacramento Kings. But he was out there. I mean, I have no problem if a veteran wants to go get work in the summer. I have no issue with that. If the Pistons wanted Killian Hayes to play in summer league, I wouldn't look at it as a negative. I'd be like, you need more reps. Go run the show with the guys you're going to be playing with. Develop that chemistry. Develop your game against live action. That's what I think is for. I don't think it's a demotion or an insult or a slap in the face by any means. I just think if you need the work, go and get the work. And you get a nice little vacation out of it too.
I know Mike Curtis had asked Troy that, and Troy basically said, when I was in Utah, we did that. We sent players first and second year. When I was in OKC, we did that our first and second year. He's like, we don't look at it as a demotion. We look at it as, more practice, more reps. And I love that because there's some things that you want to work on. Like I remember Jaden Ivey's first year. I can't remember who the coach was. I'm not even going to try to remember the coach, but they were working with Ivy trying to control his speed. And, the first game we saw the speed, and then the second game we actually saw him kind of control his speed.
Yep.
Getting into the half court, getting into the transition. So I think just that week at Summer League, you can learn a lot, not just playing basketball, but, working on your game. And by the way, if you guys have never been to Vegas when the Summer League is there, go. It is so much fun. There's so much to do. You can just sneak in the games and they don't even know.
Man, I would like to go to Summer League one time. That would be fun. I would like to do that. One final piece of news: the Detroit Pistons have signed forward. I'm gonna attempt this. Tossin Evie Buwan from Princeton. Even if I've said that wrong, that's my first attempt. I'll eventually get it. Might take me a year or two. From Princeton University, he averaged 15 points per game, 6 rebounds, 5 assists on 51% shooting from the field and 32% from the three. I watched a little bit of his highlights. I think he had 18 assists in, I think it was like 3 games in the NCAA tournament. He was throwing dimes out there from that 4 spot. Like, that dude has some great vision. I don't know, what his future holds in the Detroit Pistons. I mean, it's a long ladder to climb when you go undrafted. I know he has a contract now, but I believe still has to make the team in some regard. Like, they're not just going to give him a roster spot. It's basically, hey, we're going to give you some money. You're going to come here, you're going to work your butt off, and we're going to see what you have in you. I'm excited for the guy. I just don't know too much about his game. I know that he's a good passer because 5 assists per game at the 4 spot. That's pretty impressive. But what are your thoughts on him, man?
I think, being an undrafted free agent, most likely he's going to be on the cruise. I think he'll take a same approach as Jamarco Pickett did from a few years ago, where he was an undrafted free agent, killed it in the G League, and, it's kind of been in and out of the league. I think this is a good, summer league signing. I don't know if he'll make the roster unless he just goes berserk and he's averaging 30 a game, and you're like, okay, yeah, we got to sign you. But I think there are some parts of his game that I like. I like the playmaking. I like his ability to shoot the ball. And his help side defense, I think a lot of fans are going to like. And he's a forward. We talked about it earlier in the podcast that the Pistons needed a lot of forwards, and he's a forward. I mean, he can shoot the ball. He had kind of like a weird dip, like his first year in college, like 26% from 3, then 11, then 32. So I don't know if he changed his shot, but that is something that I'll definitely be looking at in the summer league to see if that 3-point shot is falling. But I don't really know what his future does hold long term with the Pistons, anyways.
He shot 11% from 3. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, his second year in college.
I gotta look this up for a second because that is crazy. 11%. Yeah, he shot 32% this past year. Let me see this real quick. 26. Yeah, you're right. Holy crap, 11%. Not even on a full attempt, though. This guy wasn't shooting threes that much. He got to the line quite a bit, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see what he has. Good for him to get a little bit of money early on, but I wouldn't put too much stock in this guy. It seems like we always fall in love with one of these dudes every year. So we'll see what happens with Tossin. I got a question for you, though. This is Marcus Sasser. Do you think he was drafted to replace Killian or run with him in the second unit?
So I saw this question when we drafted him. A lot of Pistons fans, we got Killian Hayes' replacement. So I'll be fully transparent with you guys. Did not watch a whole lot of tape on Sasser at all. First game I put on, I was like, man, he looks like Alec Burks out there. He looks like freaking Alec Burks. I don't think he was drafted to replace Killian Hayes. I think he was drafted to replace Alec Burks.
Interesting.
I think this is a guy that if maybe you're going into free agency and you're saying, hey, we got a team option on Alec Burks. Maybe we don't pick it up, but I think they will. Maybe they trade Alec Burks because they know they have Sasser on their bench. Maybe they want a good 30 games with Alec Burks to see what he can teach Marcus Sasser. And we saw what Jaden Ivey picked up this past year. He picked up the foul baiting. I think when I look at Sasser, I see a guy that is more comfortable in a catch and shoot and kind of playing off ball than a point guard. Not to say that he can't play point guard because he can. But I think if you're looking for a player that Sasser could replace, it's probably Alec Burks in the long term.
Is it weird when I watch him? I get like Reggie Jackson vibes. Like I feel like Oklahoma City when they drafted Reggie Jackson to be the backup. This is kind of he has a huge wingspan though too. He's 6'1", maybe 6'2" with the shoes on, but he has like a 6'7", 6'8" wingspan. Like it just screams Reggie Jackson. I mean, I love Reggie Jackson, so
Yeah, I see Tyrese Maxey a lot.
I
Just
saw
just
you.
the just the way he plays, like Tyrese Maxey, a little bit of Terry Rozier, but like just his defense, I think, is what kind of separates from those two. Not to say they're poor defenders, but I think Sasser just brings it defensively, and his offensive game is something that I think why the Pistons traded up to get him and sent some future seconds to Boston. And for some reason, fans hated that. By the way, I don't understand that.
Yeah, I didn't get the. I mean, I saw someone tweet out about like asset management. We could talk about that some other time, but I think that's what most people were confused about. But you can get second round picks any year you want, really. Like I'm not too pressed on that. I love that Troy Weaver just goes out and gets his guy when he feels like he needs to. If Marcus Sasser wasn't going to be there at 31, trade up and get him. I have no problem with that. I don't. After watching more of his game, he is more of a combo guard. I think he played shooting guard in college too. He did play on the ball, but he was not the point guard for the Houston Cougars. Like he played off the ball for them. Catch and shoot numbers are good. He's a guy that can create his own shot. That's the difference between him and Killian. Like they both can handle the ball, but Marcus Sasser, there's a purpose with what he's doing with the ball. Like he doesn't over dribble. Like he makes good, smart decisions with it. That step back is vicious. He can step back from three, step back with the mid range. He has a complete offensive game, in my opinion, in terms of shooting the ball. Like he's a little undersized, so there's going to be some issues there, but I think he's going to be a very good combo guard. I think defense is going to be his calling card though in the NBA. So that's what I'm excited about. But I see Killian and Marcus Sasser running the second unit, at least for this next season, playing off each other. But I really think when I was talking about last week that you might see like Killian, Kade, and Jaden Ivey play together, I think Marcus Sasser could replace Killian in a lineup like that just because he's the catch and shoot player.
Yeah.
And not going to take the ball out of anybody's hands. Like I could see a small ball lineup with Kade at the three and then Jaden Ivey and Marcus Sasser in the backcourt. Like that and I think that's where he'll replace Killian Hayes. When they try to go with like more defense in the backcourt, I could see Marcus Sasser replacing him in that regard.
I 100% agree with you. I think if you want to do a 3-guard lineup, it makes sense. I did ask people that are watching live on YouTube, what's his comp? And I saw a lot of Drew Holiday, which I absolutely love. I could see that. Some Emmanuel Quickly from Bravo. Love that. Terry Rozier. Lindsey Hunter. That's interesting. Okay. Mike James. All right. I love these comps. If you guys are watching live on YouTube, we do appreciate you. Almost got 200 people watching us right now. So shout out to you guys.
Hi, Mom. I don't think she's watching. Maybe my dad. Who knows? But yeah, Marcus Sasser. What do the people think though? Do they think he's going to replace Killian Hayes, or is anybody saying anything about that in the comment section? Because I would love to hear people's thoughts on that as well. Again, I still think Killian Hayes. I don't know. I don't think Killian Hayes is going to be traded this offseason. I don't think he's going to be waived. I do think this is the put up or shut up year for him with the Detroit Pistons. And I think this is a move by Troy Weaver to kind of light a fire under his ass just a little bit. Look, we are looking for other backup point guards because we need someone to come and produce. This guy, he can play defense like you. He can run the show, but he can also play off the ball. This is what we're looking for. And he's a quick decision maker, something that Killian Hayes has not really shown in the NBA yet. He makes good decisions. It's just that he takes too much time to make those decisions. But
yeah, we're not getting too much on the Killian discourse, and I don't really like to have debates with Killian because it usually ends in a very hostile way. He's still a young player. To your point, I do think this is kind of like a make or break season. He did make strides this year in development. I think this past season was probably the most he's developed throughout his career. We started to seeing the shot fall. He was starting to hit his 3-point shots, and he kind of took a backup point guard role. Um, I'm fine with a Killian and a Marcus Sasser bench unit. I think defensively, it gets me excited to have those two as your guards, and then you could throw Stewart out there. Like I think it's just going to be a really fun bench unit for me personally to watch.
Yeah, I'm excited because we're starting to get more players on the bench. Like we're slowly moving past for rooting for two-way and G League players off the bench, hoping that they have permanent roles on this team. We were there for a number of years, but we're finally moving out of that. We're finally getting some dogs on the bench. It's going to be awesome. But speaking of this team altogether, do you think the players Troy Weaver has put together fit? Now, I should give people a little context. Jim Costa, I think he's on 97.1. I'm not really sure. I remember listening to him when he was on ESPN in Grand Rapids, but he said Troy has been obsessed with non-shooting bigs and just drafted another poor shooter. My biggest issue with Troy is he's not building a team. I don't agree with that. Sure, you have a bunch of top 5 picks on the roster, but they don't fit together. When you hear that tweet, though, does that sound like a guy that watches the Pistons? And I'm not. Go ahead.
It sounds like a guy that's ill-informed, that doesn't pay attention, but why would he?
Yep.
That's my point. Like, the Pistons just won 17 games. 97.1 isn't the most reliable, I should say, network radio station in terms of, Detroit Pistons consumption. I'd like to think that, us and other Pistons podcasts that do this on a weekly or even a daily basis are more on the know of like what this team is building. His tweet kind of, because I quote tweeted, I said, it's not a finished product yet. Not all the pieces fit because it's not complete. Yeah, you have 4 bigs. The only big that can shoot is Isaiah Stewart. Yeah, there are players on this roster, like maybe he was talking about Hamidou Diallo, that can't shoot. Talking about Sar Thompson, it's not a knockdown shooter, but there was progress this year in OTE. I just think his tweet was more of the fact that they wanted Whitmore. Everyone at that network, or I should say network, radio station wanted Whitmore, and we didn't get him. And I think that's more of the fact that they wanted him, and we took a Sar. I think it was just kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say bitter, but maybe upset.
Yeah, I mean, when I read it first, I basically just said, I quote tweeted it too, saying there's going to be growing pains, but this core is going to be special. They're going to do some special things in the NBA. My thing is, these guys go into such great detail about like a Lions losing season or a Tigers losing season or a Red Wings losing season, but pay no mind to when the Pistons have a losing season. I get it. 17 wins was hard to watch. I watched almost every game of the Pistons last year, just like you did, just like so many other fans did. It was hard. I get it. But if you're going to talk about them, and you're more importantly, if you're going to get paid to talk about them, you should be a little bit more informed. That's it. Like whether you're take information from a podcast or you read some articles that are out there, whether it's from James Edwards or Amari or Mike Curtis, like they all give good information out there. You can even go read Detroit Bad Boys and you'll get some good information. You'll be more informed. I felt like this was just a bad tweet from a guy that has not paid attention, and that's it. And I have to disagree with him. There's just going to be growing pains with this team, but you have a great playmaker in Kade Cunningham that is patient, sees the floor differently. He's been compared to Chris Paul, and that's something to love. You got Jaden Ivey, who can attack the rim and put pressure on the defense, can also kick it out. He has a little bit of vision. Then you just drafted a guy that, maybe the shooting's not there yet, but it has grown, just like you were saying, from 22% to start the season to 33% to 38% in the playoffs from 3. And he's everything I've heard and read, he's just a guy that's a gym rat. He wants to be in the gym. He wants to work on his game. He wants to be great. What is wrong with that? And then you got Jalen Duren, who Monty Williams said, like you said earlier, could be a top 10 player. Guys like Paul George have compared him to Dwight Howard. Like, it maybe the picture isn't clear to guys, but for Pistons fans that have watched this team, the vision is clear. We're starting to see the puzzle come together. And, I would rather have guys getting clean looks from the 3-point line than guys that just jack up 3-pointers. You know what I'm saying? Like, he said something about the Denver Nuggets in another tweet where it's like, dude, the Denver Nuggets weren't taking the most threes during the regular season. They were just taking quality 3-pointers because they had a great playmaker in Yoke. They had another playmaker in Jamal Murray getting those looks for their teammates. That's what the Pistons have. Now it's up to them just to knock down those shots. But as we saw, wasn't it like 2 years ago, Cade's rookie season, where the Pistons they were like top 5 for most open 3-pointers. They just weren't hitting them. Wasn't there a stat like that? I could be wrong. But that's the power of a Kade Cunningham. That's what he's going to do for your team. And, with the improvement that guys like Isaiah Stewart, guys like Jaden Ivey, we all know he's going to take a step. Guys like Marcus Sasser coming in to do catch and shoot. Isaiah Livers, if he can stay healthy. Bojan, this team is going to be much better shooting from the 3-point line if that's all you want. They're going to be better, and I think the fit works.
Yeah, I think my biggest problem with that tweet was the lack of context, like you said. 97.1 does a phenomenal job covering the Lions and giving you context, giving you news, giving you stories. I've listened to not just, this isn't a shot at Jim Costa. I've heard people like Rico Beard, Mike Valeni wanting to trade for Ben Simmons. And then in the same breath saying, we don't have a war chest. We don't have draft picks. What are we doing? We don't have a star. But they ignore the fact that when the Pistons started the rebuild, their only trade chip was Andre Drummond. And that got you a bag of peanuts. We all know that. Rebuilds are going to take time when you don't have tradable assets.
Yep.
And Troy basically, his first year here, he traded Luke Kennard so he could get a Sadiq Bey that turned into James Wiseman. He traded Christian Wood to Houston so he could get Isaiah Stewart. He drafted Killian Hayes. The next year he gets Kade Cunningham and Isaiah Livers. Last year he gets Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, and he drafts Persida. This year he gets Asar Thompson and Marcus Sasser. He's building. It's going to take a little bit of time, and that's completely okay. I think when we look 3-4 years down the line and we're in the playoffs, I think everyone's perception of how this rebuild went, and maybe it took 5 years to get there. I think more fans will say, well, you know what? We're set up for long-term success now. We're going to be in the playoffs each and every year. It's not going to be built in a day. Like I've said, we're putting pieces together and the puzzle isn't complete yet. So for you to say, Troy Weaver's just collecting players that don't fit, he's not really building a team, I just disagree with that. I think he's trying to build a team. He's just trying to make sure all these pieces fit together so we can start competing.
Oh, 100%. And yeah, again, not trying to, I liked Jim Costa when he was at ESPN. And I mean, I got no ill towards him. It just seemed he was just uninformed, that's ill-informed, I guess, misinformed. It was just, that's all it was. And again, if you're going to put a tweet out like that, you should expect to get a little fire back. Again, I love what Troy has done. Maybe some of the times it has been a little confusing for sure, but when you look at the core of this team right now, Kade, Jaden Ivey, Asar, Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, those are 5 quality players that any team in the NBA, every NBA fan base would love to have those guys on their team. And if they tell you they want it, they're lying. And that's what Troy Weaver has put together. And you can't say the fit doesn't work when you haven't seen it all on the floor together. You have to see all of these guys play before you make that assumption. Let's all see how it plays out first before we throw Troy to the fire and all that. Before we say he did a bad job and he's not putting a team together. I've seen teams just draft players where it's like, it doesn't make any sense year after year after year. But with Troy Weaver, now that we've had a few years under him, like we've been saying, like you start to see the vision, you start to see the puzzle, the picture becomes a little bit more clear. It's just, that's what bothered me just a little bit. It bothered me. That's all I'll say about it.
I've told you before, I'm numb to people like that have opinions. Like you're right to have an opinion. I'm not going to say that he's wrong or right. I do think he is right in the aspect where if you look at it from a, outside perspective, it kind of looks like, why did he just trade for James Wiseman when you have Jalen Duren? Like, doesn't make sense. We've talked about it. But he's collecting talent. He's seeing what works. Like if James Wiseman turns out to be a bust, we're not losing sleep over it because Sadiq Bey wants to get paid. And we're not paying him $20 million. I think what Troy has done since he's gotten here is he's tried to collect talent. Now, has he missed on like these, project players? 100%. None of them have really worked out outside of Hamidou Diallo. Like every other player that he's tried to trade for, Josh Jackson had a little bit of a run here. Dennis Smith Jr. didn't really do anything here, but now he's a good player for the Hornets.
Yep.
Like Jahlil Okafor. I mean, I could go down the list. Like he's taken, swings at these, high draft picks, but that hasn't worked out. But he's trying to collect talent, and I can't fault the GM for doing that. Now, are there draft picks that I don't agree with? 100%. I've talked about the Killian draft pick. I think that's probably the only stain so far as a GM when evaluating talent, that it just didn't work out. He swung for the fences, and like he said, he'll swing. He'll take that swing. If a guy can pan out and reach his potential, then you're looking like the smartest guy in the room. But hey, he struck out. That's 100% okay. Not every GM is going to bat 100%. Show me a GM that has batted 100%. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and just to touch on the James Wiseman thing, who wouldn't take an opportunity to get a guy that's a former number 2 overall pick that was highly regarded coming out of college, highly regarded coming out of high school, a guy that's 7'1" that could run the floor like that? Why not take a chance? You knew Saddiq Bey, there's a good chance you weren't going to sign him for what he wanted. There was a chance that he'd probably end up walking at some point. So try to get something for him. I understand some people hated that trade, and that's fine. But you have to take those chances. You have to gamble, especially when you're a 17-win season. Just throw as many darts as you can at the board and see what sticks. That's all Troy Weaver was trying to do. And again, I think when it comes to drafting, he has put together a solid core that I think is going to eventually go very far in the NBA. And I think it's just premature to dismiss that right now. And that's what Jim Costas was doing. And
it's fine, man. Like I said, it's just a tweet. I'm not really. I saw it. I'm like, okay, you haven't been watching, and I don't really blame you for not watching. But there's context to everything, and I just think he missed the context completely. And you saw that tweet got more quote tweets than likes, so it tells you all you need to know about how he felt about it. But we can definitely move on because we do have some great topics for this podcast. I know a lot of people are going to be really excited to talk about free agency.
Okay, let's talk about free agency. We got 3 teams. We got 3 names here. Let's start with Kyle Kuzma. He's looking for $30 million per year. That's crazy. That is a lot of money for, again, he's a 20-point scorer. He rebounds the ball a little bit. I don't think he helps move that needle in the win column that much. I don't know if he'll get $30 million per year. I hope the Pistons don't offer him that. And yeah, I'm not interested in that price, and I'm not interested in Kyle Kuzma playing for the Pistons. But what about you?
It's interesting because he had to opt out. Obviously, he opted out of a $13 million contract, and he's looking to get paid, and I can't blame him. I think that's his asking price is $30 million, but I'm sure teams can talk him down. He's a player that I like his rebounding. I like his scoring, but I've told you last week, the defense for me isn't there. So I wouldn't be as high on him trying to give him that $30 million per year that he's asking for, but maybe you can talk him down to 20. I think if the ballpark was 20, then you have a conversation. Just saw a tweet out earlier today that Dylan Brooks is only asking for 12 a year. So, I mean, I think this free agency, we see all these reports of all these players asking for a lot of money, but I think you could talk them down. But for 30, I would probably be out.
Man, he's not getting $30 million. There's no way Kyle Kuzma gets $30 million. Like, I don't even think Kristaps Porzingis will get $30 million per year right now. And I think he's a much better player, even though he plays like a quarter of the games. You know what I'm saying? But I think he's closer to $30 million per year than Kyle Kuzma. And that, yeah, if you want to take that as a shot, feel free. I think my price point for Kyle Kuzma would be like $18 million a year. I think that would be fair for Kyle Kuzma. He's a 20-point scorer, averaged 7 rebounds. He averaged almost close to 4 assists. But outside of Bradley Beal and Kristaps Porzingis, who else was shooting the ball in Washington? You know, I think sometimes players, the stats can be a little misleading because there is nobody else on the team to take those shots, and someone has to take them. And Kyle Kuzma was just in the right situation to, put those kind of numbers up. I don't think he's a bad player by any means. I just would love him more in like a third or fourth option role. And I just don't know if that's something he's willing to do if he would come to Detroit, but 30 million per year is just too much, man. But if he wanted like 18 million, I think that would be I think more fair for what he brings to a team.
Yeah, like I said, I think you can talk him down. That's just what he's asking for. Like you always ask for, like when you're at a job and you ask for a raise, you always ask for like a stupid amount, and like if they meet you in the middle, you're happy with it. So I think that's probably what him and his agent are doing. Like they're just asking for a stupid number, but if you come at like 17 and a half or like you said 18, they're probably going to take it. I just don't know if he's a Trey Weaver guy either.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I don't know. I mean, I don't hate the guy. I just think that basketball isn't the only thing that's always on his mind. And I feel like with the group of guys you have in Detroit, like it's basketball, basketball, basketball family. Like that's how it feels with the guys they have in Detroit with Kyle Kuzma. Again, he's in the NBA, but it doesn't feel like it's basketball, basketball, basketball all the time. And I feel like being a Troy Weaver guy, it needs to be basketball all the time. Like we need to hear off-season stories like we would with Sadiq Bey where they had to change the locks on the gym to keep him out. Those are the kind of guys Troy Weaver goes after, and I just don't know if that's Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, I think he'll get the bag, though, regardless. I think he's one of the better forwards in this really weak free agency class. He's up there. So I could see, teams like Charlotte maybe going after him with LaMelo. But you did just kind of get Brandon Miller, which I don't know. I think he'll get paid. I just don't know if it'll be with the Detroit Pistons.
Well, let's talk about Jeremy Grant. 5 years, $150 million. This comes from Hoops Hype. Portland and Detroit are two teams that are interested in signing him. If it came down to Kyle Kuzma and Jeremy Grant, I had to pay one of them $30 million per year, I'd give it to Jeremy Grant. I think just because of all the different roles he's played in the NBA and the success he's had at those roles and how he's developed his game, that's a guy that I could see help your team win basketball games. Now, if Jeremy Grant were to come to Detroit for $30 million per year, I don't want to see him do the isolation stuff. I would much rather have him play like an Aaron Gordon role, kind of like the role he did play when he was with the Denver Nuggets. I just don't know if $30 million might be too much for that kind of role, though. So I would probably have to pass at $30 million. But if it came down between these two, I would give it to Jeremy Grant over Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah, like I don't know what Portland's going to do. I'd assume Dame isn't happy that they didn't trade that pick. And I don't really know if they're in love with $150 million for Jeremy Grant.
Yeah.
And I know the CBA is going up. I know like, 20 million today is like 10 million like a couple of years ago. But if you had a choice between Kuzma and Jeremy Grant to give 30 million, I agree with you. I probably would get Grant, just because he's been here before. Troy Weaver guy, and we kind of saw towards the end of the year, he was deferring to Kade Cunningham. He was like, okay, you take the ball up the court. You want me to cut? I'll cut. You want me to set a pick? I'll set a pick. I think Jeremy Grant is more than capable of playing second fiddle to Kade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey and the rest of those guys. But I think when we're looking at the money, just know that the salary cap is going up. So some of these role players are going to get anywhere from like 15 to 30 million. That's just how it's going to go. And, the max guys are going to get up into the 50, 60 million. So that's what I just want to like warn fans about, because like 30 million when I was a kid, like I remember like KG and Kobe were the only two getting 30 million.
Yeah.
Now you got these role players getting 30 million. I love it for the players. Everyone gets to eat.
So at 30 million though, is that too much though for Jeremy Grant for the Detroit Pistons for you?
I don't think so, because he was on a $20 million contract when we signed him. When we signed him for 3 for 60, if I do remember correctly. He was at 20 million. I think an extra 10. I'm not really losing sleep over it.
Even if his role was diminished, though, you would still be okay with it?
Yeah, because he's a two-way forward.
Okay.
He can shoot threes. He can defend. He can play make. He's been here before. He knows what the culture is about. And he loves the city too. A big reason why he didn't want to re-sign with Denver is he wanted to, play here, and I love that. But like I said, I don't really think 30 million for him is an overpay.
Ooh, okay. I think like if it was down to like 24, I would be more comfortable with that. I think that's a great number for Jeremy Grant. But like you were saying, go out and try to get as much as you can. You start at 30 and maybe you work your way down. But what do you do if you had to put a number on it, like the percentage of him coming back to Detroit? Would it be like over 50% or under 50%?
I would say 30%.
Okay.
I think Portland just re-signs him. And like I said, I just don't know what Portland's going to do. Obviously, you get a generational guard in Scoot Henderson. Chose a 00 number and Dame is 0. So, like I said, I don't know. Like, if I'm Dame, man, I want to go compete for a championship. I told you, like, Miami or Milwaukee.
I like to see him in Miami. I'm not giving it to Milwaukee. There's no way. Let's talk about one more free agent. We've talked about him almost every podcast since we started doing this, and that is Cam Johnson. He is seeking. Is he seeking 21 million per season, or that's just what the Brooklyn Nets are comfortable with?
That's what the Nets want to give him personally. And that the report has actually gone down because it was 24 million. Now it's 21 million. This comes from Michael Scotto, who very reliable writer at hoopshype.com. So I think 21 million for him. They're comfortable with it, but I think the Pistons can make the Nets sweat. And Mark Stein has reported on it that the Pistons are really high on Cameron Johnson. He's a guy that they really want to go after. I don't know what the price point would be for the Nets to just walk away, but it could be 30 million. Like all three of these guys could be asking for 30 million. You never know.
But do you think 21 million feels like a steal for Cameron Johnson, though, right?
It does.
Yeah, out of all three of these guys, he's the guy that I think he could really command 30 million and get close to getting it. I mean, it's no offense to Jeremy Grant. It's just there's something, even though Cam Johnson has not played more than 66 games in a season yet, there's just something about his game where you're like, this guy just fits, and how he plays, it just works. And with Kyle Kuzma and Jeremy Grant, like we were just talking about, there's still some question marks just a little bit because, Kyle Kuzma, we've seen his game. I mean, he did win a championship. He was playing with LeBron, but with Jeremy Grant, when he was the guy, there weren't wins. And then when he still wanted to be the guy, he was looking off Kade, checking him off and saying, I'm just going to take it. Now he didn't change his game. I get that. But Cameron Johnson, it just feels like it's just going to fit and it's just going to work. That's probably why I think he's closer to a 30 million per year than the other two.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does get 30 million, but on the other hand, I could see 25 million being like the max for him because your point, he's been injured most of his career. And I think for an extra 4 million, the Nets just match and say, okay, well, next. I think if they're out of all three of these players we just talked about, if I had to give 30 million to one player, it's probably Jeremy Grant.
Okay. I did talk myself into Jeremy Grant 2 podcasts ago, kind of playing again like that Aaron Gordon role, that he does in Denver. But what's the limit that I would offer Cam Johnson? I probably agree with you at like 25 million. That'd probably be my cutoff just because of the injury concerns. But I would be much more comfortable giving him 21 million per season than 25, even though it is just an extra 4 million. It's just, I feel like I'm getting a steal at 21, and at 25, I just feel like the expectations for him to be healthy and to be out on the floor, there's just too much pressure for him to do that at 25 million. But at 21, you could be like, all right, yeah, he played like 60 games for us. That's not bad for 21 million per year, but you're saying 25 or more, you're going to want him playing closer to 82.
Yeah, I feel like Jeremy Grant is probably out of like those three forwards that we just talked about, the most durable in terms of just being available. And I think that's why he could get the 30 million. With Cam, like 21 million, I think that's kind of in the ballpark, like 21 to 25, I would probably bet is what he'll get. But I just don't want the Pistons to just pull the typical Pistons thing and pull a Charlie V and just try to outbid, be the smartest guy in the room, and then you're stuck with him for 30 million and he only plays like a quarter of his games.
Dude, did you know that Charlie Villanueva played like 5 seasons in Detroit? I always thought it was like 2 or 3. He was here for a minute in Detroit, man. And just I was looking that up the other day. I don't know why, but it was just that shocked me because I don't remember him being here that long in Detroit. Let's move on though. We got our guy in the draft, but there was a trade that was on the table. Troy Weaver says teams were willing to trade up to 5. One team that made an offer was Atlanta. They offered the 15th pick and DeAndre Hunter for the pick, and that comes from Mark Stein. And I am so glad the Pistons kept the 5th pick. I would have been sick to my stomach. I would have hated that trade. I'm just going to say it. I would have. Don't hate DeAndre Hunter, but to drop, we already dropped in the draft from best odds at number 1 to getting the 5th pick, and then we're going to drop any more, and then we're going to take on DeAndre Hunter. No, absolutely not. I am so glad Troy Weaver kept that 5th pick. But what are your thoughts on that, man? Would you have accepted that?
Yeah, I saw this one from Mark Stein's newsletter that he writes once a week, and was listening to James Edwards' podcast. Shout out to him. He said that Utah offered 9 and a future first for 5. Don't know if Colin Sexton was part of that deal. I know he was a player that was on the trading block, but getting back to your question for Hunter, I think he's a good defensive player, but I much rather see what's there with the SAR than take a DeAndre Hunter and 15. I believe they drafted, was it Kobe Buffkin? Is that who they drafted at 15?
Hang on, what team? Atlanta?
Yeah,
I think they did draft Kobe Buffkin.
Yeah, I mean, that's an okay offer, but I'd much rather just take 5 and draft a SAR. Because I know some fans were interested to see like what kind of offers that were on the table. That was the only one that was reported, 15 and DeAndre Hunter. Hunter's a good player, but I'd much rather just bank on a SAR possibly being a better player than Hunter in the long term.
Yeah, he's played one more game and he's played 67 games compared to Cam Johnson, who's played 66. They came out at the same year. He's also 2 years younger, but like I said, I would pass on that. I'm so glad Troy kept the 5th pick. I am pretty interested in that Utah Jazz, though. That trade, if I wouldn't have minded the 9th pick and a future first. Like, I'm glad we got a SOAR, but if that was on the table and Troy Weaver had made that trade, I wouldn't be upset. I would not have been upset about that trade because, you're still getting a good player at number 9 because we saw some guys drop a little bit. And you're getting a future first for the 5th pick, but I'm glad it went the way it did. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the offers were fair, but I think you value getting a guy like a Thompson because he could develop into just a 2-way monster. You don't know. With Hunter, he's on, I don't want to say like an expensive deal, but he's on a deal that would kind of cap you in terms of like signing free agents this summer. So I think Atlanta's just in a situation where they're putting the John Collins, the DeAndre Hunters just on the trading block because they're trying to create more cap space to sign better players around Trae Young.
Yeah, he's on a 4-year, $90 million contract right now. So he's making roughly $22 million per year. That's crazy. That is, I mean, it's not a bad number for him. It's just, there were some pretty high expectations for this guy coming when he got drafted. He's the 4th pick in the draft. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm just glad Troy passed on that. I really am. But let's talk about Asura Thompson in this comp that Troy Weaver dropped for him. He said that Asura Thompson reminds him of a young Andre Iguodala. For some reason, every time I heard the Andre Iguodala comp, I kept thinking about his time in the Golden State Warriors. And I'm like, you're drafting a guy at 5 to give you 9. Crazy. I don't know why I thought that, but I love this comp, man. But what about you? Do you love it? Do you think you agree with Troy?
Yeah, if I don't know what the average age of our viewer is, but I remember as a kid when the Pistons were playing the Sixers, and they had Allen Iverson and they had a young Andre Iguodala. Andre Iguodala, when he was younger, man, he was everywhere. He was fighting through picks. He was blocking shots. He was cutting. He was dunking on everybody. I absolutely love that comp for him. If he can turn into that type of player, absolutely love it. Um, I know you had mentioned earlier in the podcast Andrew Wiggins. I think that's a fair comp for him as well. He's just kind of like that prototypical three that is, defensive minded, but the offense isn't broken and there's potential for it to be special. But love this comp by Weaver. But what do you think about it?
Oh, I loved it too. Like I remember, man, I just remember Andre Iguodala because my brother was a huge Sixers fan, so we'd always watch the NBA drafts together, and he instantly fell in love with Andre Iguodala, man, and so did I. I love guys that are like Swiss Army knives. I mean, his peak in Philadelphia when he was 24 years old, this was his fourth season. He averaged 20 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and almost a block per game, averaging 39.5 minutes per game for the Philadelphia 76ers. And he wasn't even an all-star. Like, I remember watching Andre Iguodala and thinking, this is the second coming of Scottie Pippen. This dude is just I'm a Pistons fan through and through, but I remember when Andre Iguodala was on the trading block and there were rumors of him going to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and I just thought, holy crap, we're going to see the modern day version of like an MJ and a Scottie Pippen. This is pretty incredible. And it never happened, and that's the duo I wanted to happen in the NBA because I honestly have loved Andre Iguodala's game. Guys that play like him, where they're Swiss Army knives, where they can do a little bit of everything. They're not great in anything. Those are, for some reason, my favorite players, man. And if Sasser can be half of what Andre Iguodala is, you got a great one, man. You really do. And I love that comp, dude. When I heard that comp, I fell in love with the pick, man. I started watching as much as I could, and you really do see it, man. Like in Sasser, just to talk about him for just a brief second, he seems like the type of guy that doesn't care about his stats. He just cares about if they win or not. And I think he's going to put up numbers, but him in this role, oh man, we're just going to see a full, complete player, man. I cannot wait. I just cannot wait for the season to start.
Can't wait for Summer League, honestly, man, because I know Summer League is going to be fun too. I'm not going to say we're going to win the Summer League championship because every time I do that, we don't. I've been saying it for like 5 years. This is the point where it's like, hey, man, I just want to see how these young guys look. But I absolutely love that comp by Troy because I vividly remember as a kid, because the Pistons were kicking their ass. Like, going to work Pistons they were kicking AI's ass. But I just remember watching this young rookie just get to his spots, like get by Tayshaun. I was just like, man, who is this kid? Because like we were winning anyways, but like he was like the second or first option. I was just like, holy shit, like this kid's gonna be special.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, if he puts it all together, gets some sort of an offensive game, he's gonna be a problem. But obviously injuries really derailed his career, but he is a champion. When he was with the Golden State Warriors, he was that stopper. He was, I don't want to say like a LeBron James stopper, but he made it difficult for LeBron to, get past the Warriors. And LeBron only won 1 championship with the Cavs when the Golden State Warriors were playing them. But Iggy was a big time problem. Obviously, he was older then, but I think the comp, absolutely love it by Troy.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes you wonder, like, man, if we had seen Andre Iguodala on more of a complete team instead of putting him in that role as franchise player, which is what they did in Philadelphia after Allen Iverson was traded away, it kind of seems like it was just poor on Philadelphia's management to put him in that role. If you could have put a team around him, they probably would have had some pretty special seasons. But I'm glad we got to see with Golden State, where he was the Finals MVP of the 2014-2015 Finals. So that is pretty cool in itself. Let's talk about this quote, though, from Sasser Thompson, man. Pistons are going to beat the Rockets by 30 in the summer league. Like, I love this kid's confidence, man. I really do. But do you think he should be shooting off like that a little bit before he plays his first NBA game?
Bro, I love it. I absolutely love it. He's got that dog in him. Both of him and Marcus Sasser, because I was watching the Tigers game, obviously, and this is where this quote came from. Natalie Kerwin was interviewing him, and he's just like, "Yeah, we're gonna beat him by 30." And like Marcus Sasser just started like laughing, and like he was like dead ass serious. He's like, "No, bro, I'm gonna kick his ass." Like in the press conference earlier, he said he already knows that I'm gonna kick his ass. Like he just knows. Like we are going to win. It's not even gonna be a competition. I love it. I love that he has that swagger. He has that confidence, and he's letting everyone know, "Hey, I'm the alpha out of the Twins."
Did men say anything about that?
He just laughed and shook his head.
Oh man, I think we got the better twin.
I think we did. I think we did too, man.
There's just something about like dude, I just love that because it feels like there's a lot of players, especially high draft picks, that aren't going to take summer league that serious. They're like, look, I'm already on the team. I got the contract. They drafted me high for a reason. But when a guy that's in the lottery is just like, dude, I can't wait to go out there and play them. We got to beat them by 30. We're going to put our foot on their necks and we're not just going to let up. That's something special, man. Like that is so cool. And I might be one of his biggest fans now just because of it. Like it's great that Asar said that. And I hope they do win by 30 or 40. Give them 40, man. Put it on their head. Show the world that you are the better twin, that you should have been drafted higher than a man.
It's funny because like if the Pistons win by 30 against the Houston Rockets, that timeline on Twitter is going to be electric. I can't like even if the Pistons beat the Rockets, I don't need them to beat them by 30. If Asar just has a better game than Amin when they play him in the summer league, I already know Pistons Twitter is going to be losing their shit. I can't wait.
I hope he defends his brother too. I hope he brings it at him. I hope that there's a few moments where they get switched on each other and he just locks them up. That's what I want to see. I forget the 30 or winning by 40. Lock your brother up and show the basketball world you're the better twin. Just hurt his feelings. I hope he calls. I hope he gets so hurt by it, he calls their parents and they talk to him. They sit him down and say, dude, don't be treating your brother like that. That's what I hope happens. And we might see it. You never know.
I can't wait, man. I cannot. That's probably my favorite summer league game, and I don't even know. It's just because of this rivalry between the Pistons and the Rockets that it's like a fake rivalry. It's like a Twitter rivalry, but now you got brothers in the mix. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Do we have any Q&A questions, man?
Yeah, we do. They want to give a shout out to Ashton, who was in here again. Shout out to Ashton. I don't know if he's still in here. Hopefully, I think Ashton did see those Kade pictures too.
Didn't he ask for like beard pictures?
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, I thought he had asked, like he had said something like, how do you guys put beards on people like that? I mean, if you guys want to use a beard and put it on people, feel free.
For sure. We do have a couple questions. This one comes from B-Ball for Life. Do you think Kade will be an all-star this year?
I think he'll put up all-star numbers, but he'll be overlooked. That's what I think will happen. Like if Kade is healthy, I think I said this before on a podcast. I know I've tweeted this out. I think he's going to be a 24-7-7 guy this year in the NBA. And those are definitely all-star numbers. I just think the Pistons, for as much as I've preached, they're going to be a play-in team. I know Ashton has said they're going to be a 6th seed in the NBA. It really comes down to how much they're going to win. And with all the new faces and being so young, I think it's going to be a tough start to the season. And and we all know if you have a tough start to the season, you're pretty much just eliminated from winning any award in the NBA. So if the Pistons start out rough, don't expect Kade Cunningham to be an all-star. But it would take all of us Pistons fans to vote him in. So we should do that.
I think if the Pistons are in a good winning pace and Kade is putting up similar numbers to where I think it was like a 26-6 and they're on pace for like, I don't know, 30, 40 wins. I think he could be a reserve. I don't know if he'll be a starter. I don't think he'll be a starter. But I definitely think Kade could be a reserve representing the Pistons to be an all-star. And that might kind of sound like a hot take, but I think when Kade is healthy, he's one of the better players in the NBA. And I think a lot of not only Pistons fans, but like basketball fans around the world, they're going to realize how special this kid is because we know how special he is. We get to watch him each and every night, but he's going to have an opportunity to play with a rim running and a lob threat in Jalen Duren. He's going to have an opportunity to play with Jaden Ivey in the backcourt, opportunity to play with Asar Thompson, opportunity to play with Marcus Sasser. I think the sky's the limit for Kade, and I would not be surprised if he does get a all-star reserve nod.
See, I thought this would happen. I think the all-star happens for Kade Cunningham in like fourth or fifth year.
Okay.
That's it. I mean, I would love to see him as an all-star his third year. Like I said, I think he's going to put up all-star numbers. I just think that's a pretty steep mountain for him to climb in his third year, especially coming back from only playing 12 games. I know that stuff shouldn't matter because it's a new season, but for some reason, stuff carries over from the year before. And again, I just think it depends on how well the Pistons are playing early to start the season. But I think you are right. If they do go on a win streak and they're on pace to win 34 to 40 wins, there's a chance he'll be an all-star reserve. I do agree with you on that.
I just see it. I could see the Pistons as being in a really good position where, because we've talked about it, it's more of a winning award than anything else. Like if you're winning games, like Blake Griffin made the All-Star team because the Pistons were winning. We were I think a 6 seed before he got injured. He made the All-Star team. I think if you win games, you force voters to vote for you because even though Blake only made third team All NBA, he was still one of the better players in the NBA. And I think Kade can have a similar season. So where, he's putting up all-star type numbers. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does make a reserve. And, sometimes there's an injury, like when Andre Drummond got in and people can't get in. You never know. There could be an injury. There could be a player that just doesn't want to play.
Forgot about that with Andre Drummond. I always thought he was just a straight up all-star. I forget that, he was basically an injured alternate.
Yep. Ooh, this is a great question by Kirby. I know you'll have a fun time answering this one. Out of Kade, Ivy, Duren, and Thompson, who do you guys think has the highest ceiling?
Kade, I really do. I mean, I think Kade, I don't think he'll ever win an MVP, but I do think there's a chance at some point in his career playing in a Pistons uniform that he will be in the conversation for MVP. That's how good I think he is. I think Duren has the second highest ceiling just because if he figures it out defensively with those athletic tools and the strength that he possesses, dude, there's a chance he could end up being like a defensive player of the year candidate. I really do believe that. Like, I think if he figures that out, he's just going to be a monster on that side. But Kade, in my opinion, has the highest ceiling just because he was more of the complete player coming in, out of all of these guys. Everybody else had the rest of those three, Ivy, Duren, and Thompson. They've had major holes in their game coming into the NBA. Kade, he was as complete of a player as you possibly could get coming out of the NBA draft. He, to me, is like a Brandon Roy on steroids.
Yeah, like this is such a great question by Kirby. Shout out to him. I think if you were to rank them, it's probably Kade, Duren, Ivy, and then Thompson. I think Kade could easily average 30. He could easily average triple-double. Just the type of player he is. I think Duren under Monty Williams, because Monty Williams has big plans for Jalen Duren. Listening to his radio interview on the ticket, he thinks he could not only be a top 10 center, he could be a top 10 player.
Yeah.
I think Duren is the type of player that he wished DeAndre Ayton could have been because Jalen Duren plays with so much energy and he just plays the game. He doesn't give up on a play. And I think that's what Monty Williams really likes about him. I think Monty Williams could really unlock his potential. We could start to see him, hit that mid-range jump shot, more dribble handoff offenses, anchoring that defense. I think he would be my number two. Ivy, I think Ivy could average 25. I've told you. I think he could be in a conversation for MVP one day just because of how dynamic he is. He's just such a intriguing player, and his work ethic is insane. Like we talked about it earlier this year. The fact that we thought his 3-point shooting wouldn't be where it was at the end of the season until maybe year 3 or 4, and he did it in his rookie season. That tells you that he puts in a lot of work, not only during the season but off days and in the off season. I think Thompson, if he hits his ceiling, um, he's still fourth in my opinion. And that's not to say that he's a bad player. It's just like you have those four core guys that have so much potential, and if they all hit their ceiling, you're just looking at a potential Eastern Conference contender each and every year.
Yeah, I think the reason I have Kade number one and the reason he has the highest ceiling, because I think out of these four, he is the truest of the like he is a true franchise player. You could build a team around him and win some games. With Duren, I would put him just a tier below because I don't think he's a guy you can throw the ball to and just say, go give me a bucket and he could carry your team on both sides. I think, but that's why I still have him number two. But Ivy, if he was your number one guy, I think you could be in contention for being like a second round team. That's probably why I would have him at number three. And then Thompson, because we just compared him to Andre Iguodala. When Andre Iguodala was the man in Philadelphia, they weren't one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. They were a team that was always short of another player. So that's why I would have Thompson number four. But Thompson is one of those guys that even if he only gives you 12 or 14 points per game, he's going to have such a huge impact because of everything else he brings to the team. But I would still say Kade has the highest ceiling out of all four of those guys.
Same here. I don't know if you saw it, but when Adam Silver announced the pick, he didn't say Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, he said Pistons.
The Detroit Pistons changed their logo to Detroit Pistons.
I saw that.
Barstool Detroit made Detroit Pistons shirts. Dude, I think we should change your podcast to the Picton Talks podcast.
Will we still be relevant on Google? Like that's all I care about. Will people still
probably not? But I like it. Kind of felt like a little jab too on purpose because every other team he announced perfectly.
It felt like when he was walking out, he was like, "How funny would it be to say Pictons? How funny would it be to say?" Like it feels like it was just one of those things that he thought of in the moment, but his brain just like misfired, and he said it out loud when it was just supposed to be like a joke between himself. That's how I felt about it, but. Yeah, it did feel like a little bit of a jab, like it was a little bit of a joke from Adam Silver. So,
yeah, maybe he's sick of us having lottery picks every year.
It could be. Who did you think had a better logo, though? The Orlando Magic one that you tweeted out, or the Pictons one?
I like the Magic one.
So
the Magic with the Michigan M. I sent it to my buddy that covers the Magic. Man, he was laughing. He's like, "Bro, Orlando Wolverines down here." We have a question from Ozzy C, and it has to do with Marvin Bagley and Wiseman. So his question is there room for Bagley and Wiseman on this team? I'll let you go first with this one.
No, because I think the front court rotation, I'm just talking about the 4 and 5 positions, are going to be Duren and either Isaiah Stewart or Bojan starting at the 4. And then it's going to be James Wiseman and Isaiah Livers filling in the rest of those needs. I just think Bagley shows you a lot offensively. He hasn't shown you enough defensively. And I feel like there's just really been no growth to his game since he's been drafted. Like he's just been a solid 14-6, 14-7 guy. And that's what he'll be. It's just, he doesn't really bring you much defensively. He doesn't really see the floor like you would want to see because there are times he gets double teamed and still takes a shot. I know James Wiseman does the same thing, but James Wiseman is younger. So I'm going to go ahead and say that it's Wiseman's spot to lose and Bagley's the odd man out.
Yeah, I think there's room from the standpoint of they want to have two bigs, regardless if they're starting or having power forwards and center off the bench. I do think that they're very similar. Like you said, in the post. I think Bagley has more tools when he,
Yeah.
he's backing down his defender. I think he's got way more post moves than Wiseman, but Wiseman just hasn't had the reps, and he's a guy that might make the summer league roster, which is absolutely crazy to think about. But to your point, I think there's room, the rotation wise, team wise. No, I think you'd have to pick one, and if I would have to guess, I think they go with James Wiseman just because of how much Troy Weaver was high on this guy coming out of the 2020 draft. I mean, we saw the reports. If the Pistons had a top pick, they probably would have drafted Wiseman over guys like Anthony Edwards and LaMelo Ball just because that's how highly he thought of him. But I think Bagley's a good player. I just don't know what team's going to take him on that type of contract, too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's a bad player, but if we're looking at the front court, we'll just put the 3 spot in there too. I should have done that. You at the 3, you have a sword, you have Isaiah Livers, you have Bojan, but Bojan, like I said earlier in the podcast, he played 53% of his minutes at the 4 spot. So I'm going to throw him in at the 4. Then you have Isaiah Stewart at the 4. Then you have Dern at the 5. That is Asur, Isaiah Livers, Bojan, Isaiah Stewart, Dern. That's 5 players right there. You're only really looking for one more backup, in my opinion, because then that's 6. You'd have 6 players getting minutes in the front court. I think it goes to James Wiseman because out of him and Bagley, I hate to even say this because neither of them are two-way players, but James Wiseman has shown more of an ability to defend the rim and actually put more effort on the defensive side than Bagley has. But I would, yeah, so I'm going to have to say Wiseman. Like, I think that's how the front court goes out between those 6 players. That's how I think the minutes are distributed between those 6. Asur, Isaiah Livers, Bojan, Isaiah Stewart, Duran, and Wiseman, and Bagley is the odd man out. But I still think Bagley is valuable as a rotation piece because, like I said, he's more value at 20 minutes per game than 28 because in both minutes that he's played, he's been a 14-7 guy. I still think there's a place for him in the NBA. I just think his time in Detroit is coming up.
Yeah, like I said, I just pulled up his contract. He'll be a unrestricted free agent in 2025, and he'll be 26. So he's set to make 12 and a half this year, and then 12 and a half next year. So, like I said, I think he's a good player. I just don't. I think there's room for both, but it wouldn't surprise me if they kept Wiseman over Bagley. That's just my take. That's my opinion. It's nothing that like has been reported or anything like that. It's just that's how I feel personally.
I mean, I think Bagley is still in the running to get minutes, and like I wouldn't be surprised if he got minutes over James Wiseman, but he's already said he doesn't want to play the 5, and I think that's where he should be concentrated on if he wants to get minutes on this team because I think the Pistons are going to use that 4 spot with Isaiah Stewart and Bojan and potentially even Isaiah Livers and maybe even Asur, depending on how creative they want to get. And that's just going to create more space and more freedom for other players. And Bagley just doesn't provide that at the 4 spot.
Yeah, like I said, we're I think a week or so until free agency. He could get traded for all we know.
Yep.
We don't know what's going to happen. Like he's got 24 million owed to him. I mean, we could use our cap space in trades. We don't know what's going to happen with Troy Weaver. Free agency is going to be very interesting to see what happens and how this roster it looks after it's over.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Marvin Bagley in like a 6-man role, though. You know, I think he could thrive in a role like that, but I don't know. Give me the guy that's shown a little bit more defensively in James Wiseman.
This is another question because we're still talking about it, but who doesn't want to play the 5? Bagley said that. Yeah, he said that at the end of their season press conference. He said he wanted to play more power forward, Rock, which, I mean, maybe the Pistons told them, hey, like, we got Stewart, we got Duran, they're probably going to be our 5, so if you want to be on this team, you're going to have to play power forward. I don't know if that was an actual conversation, but I would assume that was. If you want to get playing time, we're going to have to slot you over to power forward. But like you said, off the bench, great player, can get you, a cool 14-7 in 20 minutes.
Yeah, because he did say that he didn't want to play the five, that he wanted to play more power forward, that he didn't like, and we've heard that from players throughout the NBA. I think Chris Webber, he said he didn't want to play the five. I mean, we saw Bam Adebayo. He took some shots playing the five in the NBA Finals this
Hmm.
year. I mean, you're the last line of defense. You got bodies running into you. I get why people don't want to play that spot, but Marvin Bagley did say he didn't want to play the five in the NBA, that he was more comfortable at the power forward position. But I think with what the Pistons want to do, and they want to get some outside shooting at that four spot, Marvin Bagley just doesn't fit that mold yet.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think this is a complete roster. I think we'll know what the Pistons' direction is after free agency's over, and there could be a whole bunch of trades we're not even thinking about. I mean, there could be some 40 chests out there that Troy has planned. So we're gonna have to wait and see. But as of today, I think Bagley would probably be the guy that's out on this team, just because I think, like you said, Wiseman, he's not like a lockdown defender, but we saw him bother some shots in his short time that we got to see him when he did get traded to the Pistons. So I would probably bank on Wiseman just to see like what's actually there, and if they can untap some of that potential that so many fans had with him coming out of the draft.
So we'll see.
We don't really have any more Q&A questions, but I wanted to ask you, did you see Victor Wembanyama's press video that they released on Twitter?
Of him shooting jumpers and missing.
And then the Spurs took it down?
Yeah, I saw it actually today. I thought I'd never get to see it. It felt like a LeBron James and Jordan Crawford moment, but I didn't think it was that bad. The shot still looked clean. You know, I was so impressed though, the way he caught the oop in the video. Like it was so effortless, bro. And his head was right at the rim, and it's dude, he's gonna be such a monster, man. He's gonna be such a monster.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny that they took the video and then they decided to take it down for whatever reason. I was just like, yeah, so he missed a couple shots, but you know how people are on Twitter, like they quote tweeted that, they saved that video, it's bookmarked. Like every time he has a bad game, they're probably going to call him a bust.
But I mean, do the Spurs really need to protect him like that? That's just that's just weird behavior, in my opinion. It
Yeah,
wasn't a bad release. I mean, the shot looked good. He was just missing jumpers. I mean, that's all it was. But
yeah, for sure.
did you
Um,
did you see though his starting five to save the planet?
no, I didn't see it.
He went with Steph Curry, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Tim Duncan, and Shaquille O'Neal. That's literally my five, except for I'm taking Akeem Olajuwon over Shaq. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a young kid. The fact that he had a pretty solid starting five like that, that's pretty good. We'll do one more Q&A question from Kirby, and then we can wrap this up because I feel like we almost do like a 2-hour podcast every week. um, this question is, which two primary ball handlers in Ivy and Thompson, what will Kate's assist be next year?
Is this two questions?
I think so. Which two primary ball handlers in Ivy and Thompson, and what will Kate? I think he's kind of asking like, who do you think the primary ball handlers will be
Oh,
between?
Ivy and Thompson.
Yeah, maybe he can reword that.
Well, let's answer it the way that we're thinking it is. If between those two, I think Jaden Ivey, I think his development as a point guard wasn't for him to be the point guard of the team. I still think it's Cade's team. I just think that development was showing you, look, I can bring this up and I can initiate the offense and I can create plays for players off of Cade. It goes Cade, Jaden Ivey, then I think it'll go Asor Thompson. And then for Cade's assists next year, I think he's going to be a 24-7-7 guy. So I'm going to say at least 7 assists per game. And it could even be higher depending on how guys knock down shots.
Okay, he meant to say with two primary ball handlers in Ivy and Thompson. What will Cade's assist be next year? I think to your point, Lance, I'm gonna say I'll go 7. Because I think there'll be instances where Ivy takes the ball up the court. I think there'll be instances where Cade just initiates the offense. And there could be some moments where Sasser's out there with them, like you said earlier in the pod. There could be instances where Asar's out there in crunch time when they need a defensive stop. So I think they have a lot of options with just playmakers out there.
Yeah, and I don't think the Pistons are really going to put the ball in Soares' hands. I think they're going to take that part of that pressure off of him and just say, hey, look, do these other things for us. I mean, I think there's definitely going to be moments for him to create, and when he gets the ball and he attacks the rim, and there's probably definitely going to be some kickouts. He has some vision that way, but I really think the offense is going to be in Kade and Jaden Ivey's hands next season, and they're just going to take that pressure away from a sore Thompson.
For sure, man. But this was a really fun podcast. This is probably the funnest podcast I've had in quite a long time. Like, we had so many topics. And this is probably the most people we've had on since we done a podcast. We had over 230 people in here at one time, and we still have 180 people watching right now. On a Sunday, and it's summer, and the Pistons haven't played basketball since April. That's just awesome. So shout out to you guys.
Yeah, appreciate it, guys, for real.
But if you want to tell the people where they can follow you, where they can find the podcast, and where they can rate it, we can wrap this thing up.
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Twitter at Lance Caparosi, just like it is on the screen right there. That's just my name. You can follow Anthony at Pistons Talk, which I'm sure most of you do already. But thank you guys for listening to the Pistons Talk podcast. Do us a favor, go to Google, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe. After you subscribe, leave a review, drop a rating, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan.
Peace, guys.